law firms that are dealing in volume, they have a tendency to be like, yeah, that's not a case, thanks, bye. And they hang up, and then the client's just left like, okay, well, I guess I'll just call another one. He's actually, the way this happened was he called, intake grabbed it, and it's not a case we would handle. And so it didn't make its way past the gatekeepers in a bad way. And he immediately left like a 1-star review. Well, who is it? So I find out, I see the name, I go down, I was like, maybe, and I had a thought, like, maybe did this guy just call? Like, it's not a client, you know? And so I went down the call log, and I saw he had just called, and he just spoken to the receptionist. And I called the receptionist, like, hey, what's going on? Did this person call? She goes, yeah, it's junk, it was this. So I called the guy up, and I said, hey, I know you just called the firm, and I know they told you we couldn't help you, and we can't, you know, but I want you to understand why. And I sort of explained to him, I was like, this is the problem you're having with your case, and this is why nobody can help you. And the guy was like, you know what? I really appreciate that. No one has ever taken the time to just explain to me. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. All right, hey, welcome to another episode of Above the Legal Limit After 5. This is the OG series where we bring on a special guest and we drink the scotch and we have very frank, candid conversations about whatever, but always frank, always candid. Today, special guest here, Jacques Landrieu. Welcome onto the show. We should press the applause button. Applause button, guys.
Appreciate it.
So before we exchange pleasantries, today's scotch. So I picked one out. Jacques just started at the law firm. He's been practicing for a while. We'll talk about him in a minute, but he's reformed. He's one of us now. So I didn't bring out the cheap shit. I brought out the good stuff. And so this is a Balvenie that is made with exclusively. I could be wrong about that. It might not be exclusive. You know what? Tell me I'm wrong. Leave a drop in the comments. What do I care? It's made with exclusively American oak. And so a lot of times for scotches, whiskeys, wine, you know, they'll play around with the American oak versus European oak versus, you know, spent barrels that have already been used or charred barrels. This is an American oak barrel. And so once upon a time, I Googled, like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, why do we care if it's American oak versus European oak? And I knew the answer. I don't know the answer, and I will not tell you the answer today because I forgot. But I do know that it is different. I want to say, looks like I might already gotten to it. You know, we do that when we buy like a new fun cereal. Sometimes I'll like, before the kids get to it, I'm like, I want to taste this. So this is made from virgin oak barrels. It's the best kind. It's the After 5 series. I want to hear about it. All right, I've had a long day.
So uptight. Come on.
You know what? We've been doing this all day, and here we go. America. Oh, all right. Well, you know, you're driving. You're driving me home. So here we go. The sweet toast of American oak. Cheers.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Welcome to the law firm. So I like to do this. So I say that, like, I don't know anything about scotch and I'm not a big drinker, and then I like sit here and like make a big show out of it.
There. You got to get it.
Right. I'm not going to do all that.
Have you ever seen the video of the guy who does the professional tasting for like ice cream and stuff?
All the time. But we make fun of it. My kids do it now. They're like, getting those top notes,
exactly.
Getting the cream, getting the sweeteners.
We
watch that all the time. Ooh, man. So I think for a 12-year, that's actually a great scotch. The oak is kind of mellow, right? So you're not getting this intensely oaky, you know, where it like pulls all the, you know, sort of moisture from your mouth. Because we have an Aberfeldy 18 that is Cabernet barrels, and that is oaky. Like, that's just too oaky.
Is the mini bar in frame here? Can y'all get it?
No, there's not. It's out of frame.
Y'all should see
it. It's out of frame. I don't even know that's a mini bar. That's just a bar.
That is
That's just
It's a Don Draper, Roger
That is-
Sterling level.
You know, when you have a Scotch series,
Just take a nap
you
in your
buy the
office.
Scotch. I don't know. No apologies here. Not sorry. But I think this is nice. I like this. I think I had tasted it when I first bought it, but don't really have any memory of it. But I kind of like it. I think Balvenie's kind of a fun little, Scotch maker. They do some interesting stuff. I have their Caribbean cask. I go back and forth between loving it and hating it. It's like I hate rum.
Why is that?
It just makes me
Too sweet?
instantly hungover.
Huh.
I skip all the fun and I just go to being hungover. I get like one rum drink and I've got like, oh baby, I gotta lay down. I got a headache. It just doesn't agree with me. And so I go back and forth. I love it. I hate it. I love it. It's nice. And then they'll do. So they have some others. There are some Balvenies that you can't even buy here. That I was in Heathrow. And we're on our way. My wife and I were taking a trip to Norway, and in Heathrow, the duty free is like way cooler. It's way cooler than the American duty free shops, right? So here, what do you get? Like if you're in Miami or New York, there's like a Toblerone, right? And there's like maybe some Johnny Walker at like 10% more expensive than what you would buy otherwise. But in Heathrow, now this makes me sound really fancy, but they have like an entire like Scotch department store, like a real bougie one, and you walk in and it's like Dumbledore's private estate of scotches or something. I don't know. I mean, you walk in there and it just lines the walls, and there were all these Balvenies I hadn't even heard of, and I'm texting my buddy, I'm like, they got this. And I was like, I've never even heard of these. And he starts researching it. And he's like, you got to buy it. You can't buy it in the U.S. And so they have some fun stuff. But anyways, enough about me.
Scotch corner.
Scotch corner.
Let's wrap that.
So Jacques is a reformed defense lawyer, like many of us. So you've been practicing on the defense for how long now?
Probably graduated law school 2017. And then probably 2 years at the DA's office, then about 5 doing property damage, auto, defense. So 2 separate firms. So yeah.
The right answer was long enough.
Yeah.
That's where we were going with that, but that's okay.
We'll
That's
see.
okay.
Yeah.
We're working on
Yeah.
it. So we're jazzed to have you. So Jacques fits into our hiring model. And so we're very open and vocal about this. Like I like to work with former defense lawyers because we all think alike, and not in like a bad way, but like we've all kind of been on the other side. We already know what our defenses are when we start the case. I kind of know where they're gonna pick it apart, and it's helpful. And so I find I enjoy working with other lawyers that we can skip over that part because I know you know that I know, and I know that you know that I know, and let's get to the business of it. What are we gonna do? And so, but was this your second week or is this your third week?
Second week. No, wait. Second
week.
Second.
If time flies,
Check
man.
the calendar.
Time flies at the Chopin law firm.
Yeah.
We just feed him scotch every day, and he doesn't really know what day it is.
It's not really 5 o'clock. It's 10 in the morning right now.
Right.
We're just getting started here.
We do all our filming on East Coast time, so it's 8 a.m. Central. No. So yeah. So what's the biggest change so far?
It's a good question. So again, I want to lodge a complaint to begin with. I wasn't given these questions in advance. So
that's how I do it. That's
right off the top.
There's no wrong answer.
I will say, so the influx of, it is a vastly different business model, and there is it's just a completely different dynamic where you're receiving, calls from potential customers, and so those are, obviously incredibly important to, or I say customers, it's not customers, clients.
We say customers. I say customer
Yeah.
all the time because I have a shtick, like a thing, and we can talk about it. But well, you go first, and I'll.
Yeah, I mean that's the one that jumps out to mind clearly. Is you just don't have that, kind of when you're, a defense attorney, you're working for companies, and so the clients are sending you the litigation that's already in suit. You are getting so many things that are pre-suit, and you have to kind of get the information kind of in a quick amount of time to relay an understanding to the client or potential client, what kind of case they may have, if any, and then kind of tell them what to expect and then start kind of working it. And so, you know, that's been, I've had no prior experience with that whatsoever, except maybe with, you know, kind of interfacing with, you know, members of the public at the DA's office. But aside from that, this is basically brand new to me.
I mean, that is, it's a big difference, you know, it is. And, you know, when we deal with customers, so on the defense, your clients are a little bit different, a little bit more sophisticated, maybe, not always, but, you know, maybe. They have a million of these other cases, especially if you're doing insurance work. And so the reporting is like rote, right? Like you have to report every certain number of days or months. It needs to include this information. You kind of, you dread doing the reporting, right? Because it's like a huge time suck. You can't bill for it. So it really is, and well, in some instances you can't bill for it. Most insurance companies you can't, not all of them. But you know, so in a lot of ways you're just sort of like working for free, right? So if a client were to call and say, "Hey, what's going on with my case? Can you update me?" You might be like, "Yeah, sure. Hey, Bill. So let me tell you what's going on. We did this. I'm trying to get this." That's doing work, right? But not on the defense. Like if you did that in the defense, that's not working because that's a report, right? So you're working for free. But you're right. I mean, our clients, it's a full-time job, you know, to keep them informed, to kind of explain, to be that person. I always think, you know, being a plaintiff's lawyer is a little bit, not to be all, you know, but a little bit closer to maybe being like small-town doctor, right? Where someone comes in, they have a problem, they don't really know what the problem is, and they're like, well, this is what's going on, and it's our job to be like, oh, okay, well, let me explain to you what's happening. And let me tell you how I can help you or not help you. And let me put you in a path forward. So, and so that's different. I find it very rewarding to have those direct conversations.
Yeah.
You know,
I've had, I mean, again, I haven't been here long at all, but I have felt that sensation a lot. It's like, this is just intrinsically satisfying and rewarding, you know, thinking through someone's problem. I mean, first of all, it just is different, you know, kind of, you're talking about individuals and people who need help, you know, and so you feel, okay, well, let me kind of, first of all, exactly, the small town lawyer analogy is pretty perfect. It's like you kind of can tell them a little bit more about the landscape and what they might be looking at, what the possibilities are. You don't have all the answers, but you know where to look.
Candid. You can be more candid with them than you can with like an insurance adjuster. Where, you know, because there you have to be so guarded with what you say, and here it's like, no, I'm just going to shoot you straight. Yeah. You know, and a lot of times, you probably haven't gotten to do this yet, but this will be like one of the more rewarding things is when you turn down a potential client. You're like, I can't help you, but I want you to know why. I want you to understand why. And I've had this conversation many times. And I was like, because I bet I'm not the first person you called for this case. I was like, the way you're talking to me, I feel like you've probably talked to a couple of lawyers before, and no one's going to tell you the reason they can't take your case or won't take your case. And they always say yes. I was like, well, okay. Well, I'm going to help you out here because I don't want you to keep calling everybody in town. Like, you can, you know, by all means, don't take my word for it. You know, you got 5 lawyers in a room, there'll be 10 opinions. So there might be a lawyer who'd take your case. I'm not going to take your case, and I'm going to explain to you why I don't think it's a good case because, and then you lay it all out. And 9 times out of 10, every now and then someone gets mad, they hang up. That's fine. 9 times out of 10, they're so appreciative of the time that you would spend to just explain to them what the problem is. Because to them, it's like they don't understand that. To them, they've been wronged. They're looking for help. And a lot of law firms, you know, especially law firms that are dealing in volume, they have a tendency to be like, yeah, that's not a case, thanks, bye. And they hang up, and then the clients just left like, okay, well, I guess I'll just call another one, you know, and I'll call another one, and I'll call another one. And I'm reminded one guy, he's actually, the way this happened was he called this years ago. Intake grabbed it, and it's not a case we would handle. And so it didn't make its way past the gatekeepers in a bad way. And he immediately left like a 1-star review. And I was like, ugh. I was like, who's this guy? And I got a pop-up. You know, in those days I get a pop-up. Now I like find out like 2 days later. But I get a pop-up that says, you got a bad review, Justin. I was like, well, shoot. Well, who is it? So I find out. I see the name. I go down. I was like, maybe. And I had a thought. Like, maybe did this guy just call? Like, it's not a client, you know? And so I went down the call log, and I saw he had just called, and he just spoken to the receptionist. And I called her. I was like, hey, what's going on? Did this person call? She goes, yeah, it's junk. It was this. So I called the guy up and I said, hey, I know you just called the firm, and I know they told you we couldn't help you, and we can't, but I want you to understand why. And I sort of explained to him, I was like, this is the problem you're having with your case, and this is why nobody can help you. And the guy was like, you know what? I really appreciate that. No one has ever taken the time to just explain to me, because I can't remember what it was, but he definitely was wrong. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, I don't remember what it was, but basically be like, there's no way to compensate you for this, right? There's no insurance, or there's something, I can't remember what it was. He was so appreciative when he changed it to a 5-star review. And so that one time was like a huge eye opener for us. I was like, you know what, we need to do better with not even just our clients, we need to do better with our potential clients, because a lot of times they really are kind of scared or confused, or, they don't really know. They don't have the benefit of our background or education or experience to know that's like, yeah, this is what's happened to you is awful. But there's no one's going to be able to make it better for you. And a lot of times they move on. It's
interesting too, just like kind of hearing you talk. It's like the mind, I guess the state of mind that someone's in when they are picking up the phone or they're browsing, they're searching for a lawyer. It's like at that point, they're in need. They need somebody to kind of, they obviously need something addressed. They need someone to help them. And so you're not just picking up the phone or talking to somebody who's, trying to buy something or whatever. It's like, this is an important decision to, I would think, to the vast majority of people, whether or not I'm going to actually try to seek out legal counsel for something,
That's right. So it's not like buying a refrigerator, right? So if you're buying a refrigerator, you may start researching like best refrigerator near me, right? No, it's different, right? So the statistics are that 90% of the people who call in have never spoken to a lawyer before.
Which is crazy. I mean, for us, because that's all I hang out with now. It's like, and it's easy to kind of take that for granted,
We take it for granted all the time.
Yeah,
we take it for granted. You got to move your mic.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to be so polite. He's talking out of the mic.
Check. We're good?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, guys.
No, you're all right. I do that too.
I don't need to talk. They don't need to hear me anyway. I think you got it under control over here.
No, so 90% have never spoken to a lawyer before. And once you realize that, you're going to realize that every time you talk to a potential client, you really are you're the first. And it's not, as you can imagine, right? If you had to call a lawyer, like, let's imagine you had to call a divorce lawyer, right? So you would be dreading
Victoria,
if you're watching.
Ignore that. Yeah,
it's fine. Y'all are fine. You just got a baby. Y'all are doing great.
We're good.
But if you had, I'm trying to think of, if you had to call a divorce, or if you had to call, you had to call a bankruptcy lawyer. Right. That would be a phone call you're dreading. Like, you don't want to make that call. You don't want to put the bankruptcy lawyer on them, as our competitor might say, or get them, right? And so I think once you internalize that, and we realize that some of the times we have this ability to help people, even just by talking to them and hearing them, letting them say what's happened, and then gently turning them down with an explanation. And then I find a lot of those people get closure. I've said definitely in the med-mal world. So in the med-mal world, I will tell them, I was like, okay, I've heard you. I've looked. Sometimes I was like, I'll even say like, I've reviewed the medical records. Sometimes we've even got further than that. I got a nurse involved. Hopefully I haven't gotten further than that. I've paid for a doctor, but you don't have a case, and it's because, and I'll explain to them in medicine, and they are just like, oh my God, no one would ever just tell us, thank you so much. And it's very rewarding, and it'll make the whole practice more rewarding. I think I enjoy it. I think it's what I enjoy most about what we do. When I started the firm in 2015, I immediately liked that aspect. That was, I wasn't a plaintiff's lawyer. I was a defense lawyer. I just one day like flipped a switch. It was like a plaintiff's lawyer. And so everything was like a new kid. It was like a toddler. Every day was like a new discovery. The discovery there was like, oh, this is actually really rewarding work.
Yeah.
And I can get paid to do it. And that's great too. So that's fun. And you don't have to bill for it.
Right.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, you put in a hard day's work. You've gotten maybe what you wanted to accomplish. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're like, I'll have to do that in the morning. But either way, you can go home at the end of the day and you can have like dinner with your family, right? And that'll be nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you just have the one kid, right?
We do, yeah.
But it's the newborn.
She's new, yeah.
She's like brand new, like
yeah,
still hasn't even had
yeah.
her first bath yet. Maybe. Wow.
She does.
All
But
right,
yeah,
well.
we did that. But yeah.
How old?
Yeah. She was born on December 4th.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, so she's had a bath.
Going
That's
on
good.
4 months. Yeah.
Well, I joke, but when I remember, like when we gave the first bath, like we were scared shitless. We didn't know what the hell. Now, if I had one, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, you're fine. Do it in the sink.
Yeah.
No, hold on, let me run the disposal first, right? No, but I remember that first one. Like Lindsay and I we were really like, oh God,
Yeah.
she's wet.
I know. Yeah. The scare factor is kind of dissipating a little bit gradually, but yeah, it's incredible so far.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. I miss those days. That's fun.
Yeah.
And now mine are older, and so they're just like, whatever, Dad.
She's never gonna do that to me. We're gonna be best friends. She's always gonna like whatever I tell her to do and stuff. So it's gonna
My
be great.
kid jumps out of the car now, and he'll be like, "Bye, Dad." I was like, my 7-year-old. I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And now I can, like, when you reprimand, because you can reprimand now, and then I'll be like, "Yes, what?" And then they were like, I think at one point one of my kids was like, "Sir," I was like, "No, Daddy." I was like, "My name is Daddy." They're like, "Oh, yes, Daddy."
You're not into sir or anything?
Yeah, I was like,
no?
we're not
Okay.
like a military family.
Yeah.
I just, yes, Daddy. So
Yeah.
I was like, all I want to hear, yes, Daddy. Yes, Daddy. I'm like, great. All right, thanks. Well, cool. Well,
Yeah, man.
so you're going to be, Mike, you're on Mike's docket, and you have your own docket, and so you're helping us out with some of our hurricane work. So that is, at this point, Hurricane Ida was 2021, and so that is you're officially doing the Lord's work. When we're doing the hurricane cases. People have been waiting around for years at this point.
Yeah.
So that's exciting stuff. And
Yeah.
that's what you were doing on the defense, right?
Yeah. I guess when Hurricanes Laura and Delta happened in Lake Charles, I had just been recruited to go to the firm that was dealing with one of the major carriers, and they were getting basically all of the first cases coming out of Lake Charles related to Laura and Delta. And initially it was me and another attorney. It's like, okay, we're going to handle these cases, but then. Fast forward 6 months a year, everybody is just doing. That's all we're doing.
100,000 of them.
So and Laura and Delta were in major storms with major losses, thousands and thousands of claims, and so it was a great way to become. I had already known kind of how to do the nuts and bolts of a property damage litigation, basically, but within the context of a hurricane, it's basically the same, but it's just depending on how bad the event was. But yeah, it was a great learning experience. And then an Ida, kind of closer to home over here, happened more of the same. And so yeah, I would say I'm about as experienced as you possibly could be as someone at least my age doing hurricane litigation, and I enjoyed it, and so but. It's good to see it from the other side now. There are some left, but kind of.
You definitely jumped ship at a weird time for hurricane litigation.
Yeah,
I was
right,
gonna say,
right.
Probably
Yeah.
2 years ago, you'd have, you'd have been a real popular guy around here.
Yeah.
But Laura Delta was a big learning experience for us too, because I also had done hurricane litigation on both the defense and the plaintiff side. I even had some like remnant Katrina cases, and when Laura Delta hit, I was all in, but I couldn't get buy-in from a lot of the other lawyers. They were like, "No, we're injury lawyers." I was like, "No, shut up! You don't know what the hell you are. Just shut the fuck up and just listen to me. You're hurricane lawyers, and it's great work, and you get to help people, and it's extremely lucrative, and let's do it." And so we started doing some ads for them. I showed everybody, it was like how to do them. I just already kind of knew how to do it, but I couldn't get the buy-in from the lawyers who were like, "Well, it's really far away," or I don't know. I just I think that we should stick to what we to our niche, as they say now, our niche, and so I eventually got frustrated, and I shut it all down. And I shut it down way too early, and I shouldn't have. I should have been like, "No, too bad. This is what we're doing." And I think we really missed out on an enormous opportunity. And so we were fortunate. We were very unfortunate, I should say, but we were fortunate that Ida hit where it hit insofar as like we were here. And so now they had no choice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was like, well, this is our doorstep. This is my own house. Mm-hmm. You know, one of my law partners, Mike, it was his house, Phil's house. I mean, everybody, Adam's house, everybody here, we had our own hurricane claim. My hurricane claim took so long because I didn't have time to mess with my hurricane claim because I was busy working on everybody else's hurricane claim. Mm-hmm. And, you know, 6 months, a year later, we handled hundreds and hundreds of these claims. And I finally got everyone to admit I was right. They were wrong. And we never should have bowed out of Delta. We should have handled those cases. And so, but that's it. I mean, that's being a business owner. I don't always know the right move. You know, sometimes, especially in those days, you know, we were still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I think everybody was to a certain degree, you know, but it was interesting to see.
It's been a long time since a hurricane, right? I mean,
yeah,
it really had been. Everybody thinks we're going to have, it's like a perennial event. It's not, you know, it might be for the United States, but it's not for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially of stuff like to that magnitude that like Laura and Delta and then Ida. And I will say too, it was interesting just to see the various, you know, plaintiffs firms that were involved. Some people had hundreds and hundreds of cases. And I'm like, I don't know how great of a job they're doing. Then others, you know, I thought were very, you know, proficient. And
I was talking to a lawyer last
competent.
week who said some of those firms had thousands.
Yes.
Thousands of
yeah.
cases.
Well, there's one in particular that comes to mind that might have.
But there were, you know, I was talking to a lawyer it was specifically in reference to MMA.
Yes.
So I'll say it.
Yeah,
you know, it's in reference to MMA, and they were saying, oh, they've got 2,000 MMA cases.
Yeah.
Just this one.
So this new firm has 2,000 of the previous MMA cases?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm like, holy shit. Like, we had hundreds and hundreds. We certainly didn't have thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
And then I got sad thinking like, maybe we should have tried harder. Maybe we should have gotten thousands and thousands. Yeah. I'm sad that our hurricane work's mostly over because I enjoyed doing it. I
don't know what it's about. I mean, it's you know, it's I enjoyed it just as much, you know, as kind of any work I've done so far, you know, and yeah, you know, it's you got to kind of, it isn't though necessarily the same as auto, you know, it is different, you know, and I do enjoy kind of the aspects about digging into an estimate, you know, and stuff like that. And because, you know, as much as we could reduce it in numbers, you know, you're really talking about the most important asset that basically anyone you'll ever talk to is ever going to have, you know, it's their home.
All of America.
Yeah.
All of America.
Yeah.
You know, has their value. When you talk about Americans' net worth, like, what does that really mean? They're not talking about their stock portfolio. They're talking about their home.
Right.
And unless you really are not a 1%er, but like a 0.01%er, like even your 1%ers, even your like working professionals, even that orthopedic surgeon, you know, who makes $1 million a year, you know, he or she, like their net worth really is in their home for most people. So you're right. I mean, you're talking about, this is like, it's not just like a livelihood, right? I mean,
yeah. It's where you spend and your kids spend, you know, the vast majority of your time together, you know, and so it could sound like squabbling over numbers or something like that, but, you know, the difference of, you know, repairing or this damage to your house, you know, makes a major difference in your quality of life at the very least. You know, this is not, you know, a trivial
Hurricane
stuff.
Zeta came through. No one ever talks about Zeta. Zeta got recategorized as a Category 3. We were sitting there. We did not evacuate. So, I don't know. You know, well, I'll ask you. Do you evacuate? I'll ask you that in a second. But we did not evacuate for Zeta. We also didn't evacuate for Francine. And I drove my wife's car into 5 feet of water. So there's that. But we didn't evacuate for Zeta. And we were sitting there watching TV. And we actually never lost power, which is remarkable because it hit so close to us. But it ripped the roof straight off. In those days in the house we had was like a garage and it was attached with a bridge to the main house. It ripped the entire thing off. And my kids were sitting right there watching whatever it is they were watching. It scared the shit out of them. They still talk about that. Like if a big storm comes through, my little one will all of a sudden be like, oh, Daddy, it's not going to rip the roof off, is it? And I was like, no, buddy. No, it's okay. It's just some rain. Oh, okay, I'm just checking. It scared the shit out of them. and it should have. I've got video of it. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it was a big event, and people don't talk about it. But what's interesting about it is I made a claim, and we had to repair, we replaced 3 roofs, really 4 actually. Just that the way the house is kind of set up. They were like, how can we make your roof like the most expensive roof to replace? And we're like, well, I mean, the first thing we can do is we can make it 4 different types of roofs. Like, neat. Yeah, let's do that. So I had to replace, the garage roof, the bridge. There was a flat portion. All that needed to be replaced. And then our roof needed to be replaced. Our insurance company came out. I had a roofer came out. Got recommended to me. Arc Roofing, if you need a roof. I thought it was great work. I actually like the roof that they put on my old house better than my new roof, aesthetically. And but he did a great job. Not a dollar out of pocket. Nobody was like interrogating me about like the age of my roof. It was old, right? Nobody was like, nobody was talking about the depreciation on the roof or whatever the lifespan. Nobody was talking about the sheet metal because the bridge was actually technically a metallic roof, and it was like the roof was older. It had rust and stuff like that. Nobody said a word about it. They just said, "Yeah, Justin, don't worry about it. We got you," and they replaced the roof. And it's because it wasn't a big event, right? There were only a few of us out there that just happened to lose our. If I hadn't lost it then, I absolutely would have lost it during Ida. And actually, Ida came through. It was a great roof. We didn't have not a single damage to our house. We were very fortunate. But when you have these other events, the insurance company, it's like they're like, oh, sure, well, of course, that's why you have insurance, Justin. Here's a check. Nobody says that when it's Hurricane Ida. Nobody says that when it's Katrina, when it's Laura, when it's Delta, when it's Gustav. When it's a mass event and everybody has got a roof, all of a sudden, all the arguments start coming out. We're like, well, I mean, technically, I don't think that you've met your deductible.
Yeah, that's true.
It's remarkable. Nobody did that to us. I had a good friend of mine hire us. He had a house uptown off of St. Charles Avenue. His insurance company, it's now bankrupt, said, well, you didn't meet your deductible. So he calls me up. He's like, what do I do? And I was like, well, don't worry about it. I'll help you out. I'll come out there. And I sent an estimator out there. I was like, look, show them all the damage. Show them everything, whatever it is. Just show them the damage. Make sure we have this all recorded. Then they do their second inspection. Then we go out for like a second re-inspection, whatever the fuck that is. That's a third inspection. But this time one of the lawyers is there. The insurance company immediately called and said, would you take $150,000? So you went from not being able to meet the deductible, basically insinuating that this guy's full of it, to perfectly willing to stroke a check for $150,000. I didn't file the lawsuit. I'll just send a letter, and it's crazy. But
yeah, I mean, and look, that's having worked with, basically, the biggest carrier. I just, us coming from a defense standpoint, we know exactly how the carriers operate, and so I could just tell you exactly what happened is that your claim got elevated to the litigation unit. And so a lot of people will be stuck in that. They're kind of at an impasse. It's like, I was just talking to my friend who lives in another state, but he was saying, I've gone through 6 different kinds of visits and inspections and phone calls, and nobody's making any sense. I'm like, look, what you got to do is just you got to get a lawyer ultimately. And I don't say this lightly necessarily, but, it's like it's clear as day that this is what's happening is they have put their, dug their feet in, and what you got to do is you have to, he's a lawyer himself, and so it's like you could. Really? So yeah. So,
but it's a lot of work.
But still, yeah, I know for somebody who's kind of not familiar with it. Okay, so what exactly do I do? Anyway, like you need to retain a lawyer at this point because this is how these companies are structured. It's that they have teams that it elevates to another team once a lawyer gets involved. And a lot of times they look at things from a different perspective, and a lot of times they're kind of, I wouldn't say easier to deal with, but kind of see the bigger picture to a certain degree. And so, look, a lot of these decisions that are being made, and I'm not trying to demonize anyone, but a lot of the people are making, are working for the companies. They might lose perspective over time, whatever reason you want to have. They just lose perspective, and the decision they make about whether something's covered or not, or the extent of damages, or whether what you're saying, if they think you're credible, something like that, whatever it is, it's their decision. They're not necessarily definitively right about it, So it's always good to get some insight, especially from someone like you or me who does this for a living, to say, well, that's wrong, or here's why he's saying this, or just to get some insight into what exactly is going on and why nobody seems willing to kind of meet you halfway, or kind of believe what you're saying. And kind of it's if there's a lot that goes into it, but it's always, I think, a lot of times the best thing is to seek some help from somebody who kind of knows how these things work, and so that's where we come in. We're a little bit, that's our job, to kind of tell you what's going on.
Well, that's what I tell clients too. Is like, what part of what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to take this enormous administrative burden off your shoulders. People come and they'll have like their spandex.
I was breaking into sweats listening to my friend tell me about everything he's done. It's
so much work.
Yeah, and I'm just like, good God, when do you work? You're just doing this. I mean, how much time have you spent? Kind of
they'll have 50
calling, and a lot of this stuff is pointless. It's not going to go anywhere at this point, And so the only thing to do, I just knew from what he was telling me, was like, the only thing you can do at this point, and really should do, just stop doing what you've been doing and just find a lawyer and retain them.
Let them do it.
Let them do it, because it changes. It's just an entirely different process.
I had a client once, and she was like, "Well, I got to go to the Home Depot and make a copy of it." I was like, "What? No, you don't." I was like, "Don't do all that. Listen. This is crazy. You're spinning your wheels. You're working around the clock trying to do all this. You're trying to organize everything." I was like, "I have a whole team of people. Like, all they live to do is to make copies for you, scan it, and save it, and organize it. This is all we do all day long." It's like, well, I have the administrative team here. You don't need to be doing all that. And I was like, that's an administrative part. You don't need to be calling the adjuster 3 times a day. We'll do that.
Yeah, and again, too, it's like, I don't know, if it's, I'll have no problem telling them, like, yeah, you just do that, do this, and you don't really need me. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the times, it's nothing's going to come of it. It's they've made their decision. They have no basis, quote unquote, to change their decision. That's final. And no matter how many phone calls, they're just going to, they can't. They're done for the most part. And so what they're, I guess, next, kind of goal is to, not goal, but what's going to happen is they're just going to field your calls and log them, and then the next person who's on duty will get your calls.
Right, because you don't have a dedicated person, you have a team.
Right.
You're on the team. That drives me crazy.
Right, and so
anyone, I would love to know how many people are on the team.
Yeah, that's especially bad for big storms. Because
well, I'm on your team. Yeah, that drives me nuts. Yeah, even as the lawyer, it drives me nuts. Every time I call, I get like a new person. And I was like, well, whatever. Like, Bob and I just had this long discussion, and they're like, well, I'm on your team. I'm like, okay, but were you present for the discussion I had with your colleague? And they're like, no. I was like, so you have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
Right.
I was like, right. I was like, so well, let me read the notes. I was like, I'm going to let you read the notes, because I don't want to have this discussion until you've read your notes. I will sit here quietly. I'm going to mute my phone.
Yeah. So that alone is kind of one of the benefits of when you do end up retaining counsels, because you might, I don't know, maybe you might get 1 or 2 lawyers, but you're not going to have just this carousel of adjusters.
I'm on my 6th adjuster. Yeah. So, well, hey, look, I got this thing. They said our time's up.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's it. Just like that. That's it. That's what everyone always says. I don't know. Apparently, I just talked for 30 minutes, and everyone nods. And
that was easy.
And that's why we're always looking for new guests. All right, Jacques Landrieu.
Thanks, guys.
Newest attorney at the Chopin law firm. He's here for all your needs, both personal injury and hurricane. Are we gonna have a hurricane this year?
I don't know. What is it? Every year it snows in New Orleans.
No shit. Listen, I remember
it snowed a lot.
I remember
when
Katrina hit. Right? I mean, I was like a full-grown adult when Katrina hit, and a lot of these kids are like, they were so young they don't know, but I know it snowed that winter, and I think it even snowed on Christmas Day. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it snowed on Christmas Day that year, or obviously it would have been like the 2004 Christmas Day. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't think I am. It absolutely snowed this year. The weather pattern, that was nuts. That was a lot of freaking snow.
Man. Yeah.
I learned something this year. We had a case. I know, I didn't, I'm not listening. So this year we had a case where someone called us from the snowstorm, their roof collapsed from the weight of the snow. And it wasn't covered. And I was like, what do you mean it's not covered? Don't tell me my client's roof's not covered. It wasn't covered in the policy because, and my wife's from up north, she's from Indiana, outside of Chicago. And, they're used to getting snow up the door. And of course she's like, no, idiot. The roofs up there are constructed in such a way to be able to have 2-3 feet of snow on them. And turns out ours aren't. And I had no idea. So I learned. So I never, it was a once in a lifetime snowstorm, once in 2 lifetimes, maybe 3. I don't know how old you are. I don't know when you're going to die. But, I never really thought about that. And so I felt bad. I was like, yeah, it's totally excluded. You're toast, bud. I'm sorry about that. That's a bum deal. And now I'm kind of worried about my own roof. But that was a big snowstorm. So we'll have to see. I don't know. I'm not going to run out and start buying domain names for every hurricane on the list. I'm not going to go buy 26 domain names. But we'll see.
Let's hope there's not, obviously. But if so, it's good to be prepared.
But, but if there is.
Yeah.
We're here for it.
Right.
I got a whole home generator. I got a bottle of Balvenie American Oak. I got Jacques Landrieu here.
We're bringing the bar home.
Standby.
We're good.
And I don't want to go through another Ida, but I'm perfectly willing to.
Weren't you going to ask me if you always evacuate for?
Yeah. Do you evacuate?
I do. Yeah, I do. Well, actually, though, my wife works for the parish, so she's actually the designated. She has to stay behind.
Oh, she's got to stay.
Used to. So, but now
so
recently,
she was hella pregnant for Francine. Then,
yeah.
Did y'all stay for Francine?
No, I don't think
you
so.
left.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
Her parents live in Memphis.
Oh,
so yeah.
All right.
So
all right.
yeah, we go up to Memphis.
You know what? Yeah. I never evacuated for a hurricane until Katrina. I'd never done it before, and we weren't really going to evacuate for Katrina. It was people when we were growing up in South Louisiana, the people who evacuated were like the people who lived in like Plaquemines, or maybe you're like in the Port Fouchon, or maybe you're down in Houma, Thibodeau, maybe not even them, or some of the people in St. Bernard might do it. We just, Orleans Parish, we just didn't evacuate. I remember we were 24 hours from the storm hitting. And the family was having dinner, and we were having this intense discussion about whether or not we were going to evacuate. And my mother's like, absolutely not. My father's just kind of like, I don't know. Us as the kids, well, we don't know. I mean, we were old. I mean, I was in law school. I was halfway through law school when it came through. But, we still really didn't know. And so I remember asking, I was like, look, because my parents, their reference point, so our reference point will always be Katrina. Their reference point's always Betsy. I said, well, look, in Betsy, what would happen if your house got destroyed? And my mom said, you would just go to your neighbor's house next door. And I said, well, what if they're not there? Because everyone's gone. Mm-hmm. And I remember.
What neighborhood were they in?
She grew up on the 17th Street Canal, right on the parish line in New Orleans Parish.
Okay.
And so we, I remember waking up, storm is we're like some of the last people to get out of here. And I called my friend. I said, change of plans. I know I just told you before we went to bed, I'm not evacuating, I'm staying. But actually, I turned on the news and I saw it, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be here for this. This looks crazy. I said, we're going to evacuate. But I was such an idiot. I was like a classic 28-year-old moron. And I was like, I evacuated with like no power cord, one change of clothes. I just grabbed my laptop and left, in only the way a complete fuck off in school could possibly do. No functioning adult would ever evacuate like this. And I went over to my parents' house, and they're they couldn't, it's 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. They're up because no one knows. I'm evacuating. Decided, change plans. Family's out. Everyone's and it was I felt like it was kind of what the family needed to hear. They were like, all right, let's do it. Let's go. But we were so late, everybody else was already out, and so we did that. So long story, but that's my Katrina story. So I had never evacuated, and so when people look back and they're like, "Oh, you're so stupid. Everyone evacuates." I was like, "No, it wasn't like that."
No, it wasn't.
30 years ago, 25 years ago, it wasn't like that. So now, we did evacuate for Ida. And I did the exact same thing. I was like, we're staying. And then
Yeah.
I went and woke my wife up because we had 2 babies. Oh, and my wife doesn't know. She's from Indiana, right? And so she was in grade school probably when Hurricane Katrina hit. And so I woke her up at like 3 in the morning. I was like, I'm sorry, but I've changed my mind. Hey, I need you to wake up. We're evacuating. She's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I was like,
No,
she's like, when are we doing it? I was like, well, about that. So we actually need to leave right now. She's like, why? I was like, well, the hurricane's like right on the shores. We've got exactly 10 seconds to get the fuck out of this house. So I'm gonna need everybody to wake up. All right. You get yourself, brush your teeth. Sure. Bring the toothbrush with you. But I'm gonna need everybody out of the house right now. We're all evacuating.
Yeah.
It's
the safe
So
bet.
it's the second time I've evacuated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't do Francine.
Yeah.
Because we got a whole home generator. I wanted to try it out. I wanted to see how it was gonna work.
Yeah.
I don't know. The
Not
next
there
big
yet.
one comes
Yeah.
through. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, all right. I said I was gonna stop. I've stopped. Jacques Landrieu. Hey, thanks for coming by. If you want to try the American Oak, tell you what, don't go buy a bottle of it. Come on up to the Chopin Law Firm on the 15th floor, 650 Poydras, and I'll pour you a drink and you can decide if you want to buy it yourself. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.